I was gonna say we're gonna be looking a lot at these. So if you have trouble seeing the details, move up a little bit, because it's all gonna be all about manipulating the x and y and z values of different objects on the screen. Who in here has used the animations in Camtasia Studio before? Camtasia Mac or Camtasia Studio? Doesn't matter, both of them. Just have you used it in Camtasia Mac? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to be demoing this in Camtasia Studio, but it also applies to Camtasia Mac. In terms of the UI, it's slightly different. In terms of what you can do with it, it's exactly the same. So just all right. So let me jump in. So what I did is I went last night and this morning, I went through some of the projects I've done over the last couple of months in Camtasia Studio, and I pulled out some examples of things that I've done that I think look nice and that you guys can probably replicate for some of your projects that you are creating, just to make them a little bit more interesting. Just as a general introduction again, so if you're working with Camtasia or in Camtasia and you have an object on the screen like this guy wearing the party hat, and you add an animation, it creates this. Oh, come here. Yeah, I do. Okay. So it adds an animation point, and we can define the properties of the object before and after the animation. So if I change the properties of it afterwards, through this animation point, it moves along that line. The same goes if I change the, for example, the y value by 180 degrees. Afterwards, then I have the effect of, the person turning around. So that's kind of nice, and of course you can go completely crazy with stuff like this. So you can have effects like this, and I don't know if that's what you had in mind with crazy animations. But I like to use it a lot for just creating really subtle little things that make kind of big impact. So that said, I'm going to show you the first thing. No, not this one. Okay, so here's a video I made, and we are just looking at the introduction, the first 3 seconds of that I created in Camtasia Studio, to just make my title slide not just static text, but make it slightly more interesting. This is for the freeze region effect that's in Camtasia Mac. All right. What? All right, let's do that one. What's that one more time? So we have that spinny effect, and then we have the blue stuff coming in, the stuff. So this one is pretty easy one to do. So let me start a new project. Don't save this, and find my assets. I'm sorry, I got kind of distracted here. Creative. Okay. I'll explain some of that in a second, what I'm doing here. Okay. Into Camtasia Studio. Okay. So what I do a lot of the times is I work a lot with graphics. I like graphics because they're consistent. I can easily update them. Usually I use Snagit or Photoshop for creating my graphics, depending on what I'm working on. And graphics are easy to manipulate, as opposed to video, which is moving in itself. So it just kind of gets harder to have it work out the way I want it to. I mean, you can do a lot of the things with video as well if you want to have video that slides in and spins. But I really just find in one of my projects, or most projects, I usually have like 2 or 3 video clips and about 20 graphics that I animate and do things with. So I always start with a background. So a solid color in the background, or a slightly gray shade in this case, as just my ground layer, and that's for my title slide. Then I have this text right here. Freeze region is what it means, and I have that same graphic in blue. So I have it once where the first part is black and then the second one is blue, and I want to have those 2 colors change. And then I also have a graphic of the snowflake. So let's first work on the part where we have the text slide in from the side. That's really easy actually. So we already have it at this point at position at the spot where we want it to be at the end of the animation. It's already centered, it's already perfect, I have it lined up. So I'm going to go into the visual properties, add an animation, but let's zoom in. But now I'm not trying to change the endpoint, but I want to change the beginning point. And all I need to do in this case is I move it using the arrow keys to the left, out of my picture. And I like using the arrow keys for this, because that way it stays aligned with everything else. I could also just change the values here on the left side if I wanted to, and make sure I keep the y-axis on 0. Okay, so, but now it's the beginning point is outside, the other one is inside, so that's already pretty easy, but it already is like, hey, here's my introduction to freeze region, slides in, a little bit better than just having it just appear and having it kind of show up from the very beginning. So now the second part is, since we want to kind of emphasize the fact that we're freezing the region and we want to make it have that cold feeling, so I want to change the color over to this blue area. So I'm going to drag this down and position it on top of the other clip, just slightly after the animation. So let's take a look at this. So now this just appears. Did you have a question? Oh, no, you, no, okay. So this is, it just appears. The easiest way to kind of make that look nice is just using a transition right out of Camtasia Studio, maybe the fade transition. Let's see how that looks. Maybe have that go appear a little bit faster, so half a second. And maybe slightly positioned on, no, it needs to be after the animation, otherwise it doesn't match up. So it comes in and it turns blue. Okay, now if we go back to the original clip, just to watch it one more time. So we have the, oh, it didn't fly, oh, that one was spinning, okay, sorry, I built a different one. That's okay. So now we have the snowflakes kind of show up from behind. So again, I take the snowflake, drag it to the timeline, and I usually start out by positioning it the way I want it to have at the end of the animation, because that's the one that's a lasting impression. How it starts out is slightly less important, because it's really going to only be there for 1 second. It's the end position that's important, because that's where it's going to be hanging out for the last 3 seconds of the slide. So in this case, I want to have the snowflake slightly bigger, and I want it to kind of maybe even turn a little. I want it to show up right at this spot. I move this playhead in, and I go ahead and I add an animation. And now I'm going to go back to the beginning of it, because I want to change the beginning properties of the snowflake. The end, I'm happy with that. And what I often like to do is I like to scale things down just a little bit, because it just kind of gives it that kind of like it grows out at you effect. So let's maybe bring this down to not completely 0, but maybe 65%. And what I also often do is I drop the opacity down to 0. So it comes out of nothing and kind of spins in. Rather than, I do that a lot with the regular callouts as well, rather than using the properties of the callout itself to have things fade in and fade out. I just use the add an animation, I use the opacity slider. I feel I have a bit more control over that, and I can easily adjust that. And then maybe we set the snowflake already at the end. If we look at this now, it kind of grows in, but it would be kind of nice to give it a little bit of a spin, so it kind of like turns in on you. So let's just change the Z value to 0 again, and let's take a look at how that looks. Yeah, let's take a look at that. So we have the snowflake that just kind of grows out on us. Now looking at this, it's in front of the word freeze. I think it would look better behind it, so I'm just changing the order of those 2 layers. And let's see. So we have the snowflake behind it, maybe speed that up a little bit. And then I think it would also be nice to have the snowflake lined up with the word freeze. So it's like the snowflakes are freezing the word, the second word, and turn that into blue. So I'm just lining that up. Beginning of the animation with the blue word appearing. And now we have a little animation that says, hey, freeze region, and then the word freeze gets kind of frozen by this one snowflake. I could add 2 or 3 more to kind of have more to that. But that's just a little example of something you can do with, that took me, what, 5 minutes to build a little animation. And that looks a lot better than just saying, hey, welcome to my tutorial on freeze animation. Yeah? Questions on this particular little example?
Could you show an example of using easing of the text coming in? I think you did that in the produced version. You haven't used easing, so when the text comes in, it comes in and it sort of slows down.
Yes, we can. So, who doesn't know what easing is? Okay. All right, I will do that. Let me save this one out real quick so we can go back to it. Okay. So, okay. Let's go back here and add this arrow. Okay. So,
I'm just trying to set this up so I can show you.
So easing is a way where you animate an object and it doesn't accelerate linear. It doesn't move at a constant speed from beginning to end, but it kind of starts slow, gets faster, and then comes to slows down again towards the end of the animation. And that is something that is hidden when you do a right click on an animation. You have the option animation easing, and you can turn this on and off. So let's enable it for one of those two arrows. They're moving along the same line, taking the same amount, taking up the same amount of time. So if we look at this, we can see that hopefully one of them starts slower, but they both come to the end at the same time. So one of them gets started slower, but then goes faster and catches up to the other one and slows down again, and the other one just moves linear. So you can do that one time. And it has, yeah? Yeah, I'm sorry, you're out of luck. That's one of the small differences. I think. I'll double check, but I don't think that's in there yet. Okay, yeah. If you're not seeing it, then sorry.
It's only in the Mac version?
No, it's only in the PC version, I think. So you can use that. Like that would have been a really nice. Okay, let's go back to our snowflake. Because I think the easing would be nice to have on that snowflake that kind of comes in and slows down. That might just look slightly different. It's a small effect, but it could make a big difference. So let's look at the original again. So we have snowflake just kind of go, whoosh, it's right here. So let's apply easing to it and see how that looks. Didn't make a big difference. But it kind of has a slower feel, like it has a more smoother feel to it as it comes in, I think. You will probably see that a little bit better in the produced version of this video, rather than right here in the preview, because this laptop is not the fastest to really keep up with everything that I'm doing. Yeah?
Can the easing be adjusted, or is it just easing or not?
It's right now it's just easing or not. Yeah, one step at a time.
Easing looks quite nice when you're bringing text in. Like in the first example Anton showed, I think he used easing on his text, not in this.
Yeah, right here.
And it sort of follows the way your eye wants to work. You know, you're following the text and it slows down, and then it's a bit like a train going in and out of a station. There's nice fluidity to it.
I didn't understand the purpose of the easing, because I'm like, well, I just jam it in there. You know? I can see how.
Yeah, especially like, so let's take a look at this example. I didn't do easing, I did something else where I kind of had it bounce back just slightly, but to have a similar effect of.
Okay.
So here the text shows up and then kind of slows down.
That's quite nice.
So I added a little bounce because that was before easing was available in Camtasia Studio. So, but in this case, in the video that we have here, where'd it go? Okay, freeze region. So the text right now just kind of runs in. and comes and stops. So if you apply easing to that same animation, unfortunately it's easy to just try it out, enable it, disable it.
Yeah.
And now we have the text. Okay, it's a bit hard to see. Let's make this, extend this a little bit so it takes its nice sweet time. Comes in, kind of slows down a little bit, and then the next thing comes in. So you can play around with it a little bit, try out each of the two settings as you're creating the animation. Sometimes one will look better, sometimes the other one will be better, sometimes you won't see a difference. But that's definitely something new. That's just an 8.1, and since 8.1 is not available in Germany yet, so I have not used the easing much as yet. It's coming next month, so it's not that big of a deal. Okay, so let's go to...
That's an interesting question. If you have an English version of 8.1 and a German version on your machine, can you copy the effect from one project to another project then?
No,
I see.
unfortunately not. So I'm constantly installing and deinstalling that software. Even this morning I had to kick the German version off my computer and put the other one back on. Okay, let's take a look. What else do I have? Okay, let's do this one. Sure, let's save that. Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you just did, the text box and animation editor? Is that something unique that you're doing?
This one?
or- Yes.
That is just my list.
Oh, your list of...
My list of things I want to talk about today.
I thought it was something you pulled up as an asset out of Camtasia.
No, that's just my list of, it's just my to-do items. What do we have here? That's not the one. Okay, here's another video. Okay, we're gonna have this. So this was a marketing video we created for Camtasia Studio, for Camtasia Mac, but I did it in Camtasia Studio. And you have this effect with this piece of paper slides in at the very beginning. So let's look at that again. Oh, come on. Internet. Hello? Come on. So you have this piece of paper that kind of slides into the picture, and then you have a bunch of stuff that's happening on it. This is a really easy effect to build. Oh, right. So let's watch it one more time in full screen, if it works. So you have the paper that slides in, some stuff appears on it, there's German audio that goes along with it, talking about visual communication problems, blah, blah, blah. And then the paper keeps sliding, and the next story continues happening, and then we have this phone that shows up and moves out of the way, and then the paper is gonna keep sliding in a second, and so forth. So this is the effect I want to show you is how I got that like little paper to slide in. It's really easy. So let's go to this and notebook slide. Oh, 1 second. Almost ready. Okay. So what I have is... Did that work out? No, maybe. Alright, I'm sorry, this is... Come here. Okay, so now I have it set up. Sorry, that took a second. So I've created again. Oh, somehow this is not really working right now. Okay, let's just recreate the effect. So what I have prepared to do this animation is I have a background. I always start with a background. That's pretty straightforward. What's going on here? Okay. So I have my wooden background, and I just kind of size that up to be in the background. I don't really care about that. I just want to have that as my bottom layer. And then I have a really long graphic of the piece of paper. It's longer than my actual picture is. It's longer than the actual screen real estate that I have. And that's a nice thing, because I can slide it in and it can come in from the bottom, and it's still gonna, it's gonna fit on the page, and it can keep sliding out. So I drag this down, and again I resize it to the size I need at the final stage. So I want this piece of paper, let's make it maybe a little bit smaller. It's more like a little piece of note paper. I can maybe have a graphic of a coffee mug next to it later. And I say, okay, that's the way I want to have this piece of paper at the end of the animation. People are gonna see my desk, and then it's like, hey, here's your homework for the day. Just drag this into length a little bit. So now again, I go into the visual properties, and I add the animation, and then I go back move this in front of the animation because I need to set the properties before it slides in. And again, in this case, it's just like with the text I did before. I'm just moving it below, so it's gonna come out from the bottom, and it's gonna magically land on the table. I can make this shorter if I want this to be rather quick animation, or I can of course drag that out, have it be really slow. Then a little bit later in the video, the pieces of paper keep sliding, and they get to the next chapter or the next homework assignment, for example. And I, at this point again, add an animation. And I need to set the endpoint, so I move the slider after it, and it lays maybe like this. So now we have the piece of paper that slides in the first time, then it keeps moving. And now I have the problem, I want to keep having this endless roll of paper, but my graphic is at the end. So I really can't keep sending it up because I don't have any more real estate, any more pieces of paper left. So what I did in the video is pretty simple. I just threw in another piece of paper on top of it, and hold on. So I already did that at this stage, where I knew that I was gonna, so after this animation, I basically ran out of pieces. Oops, that's not what I want, go away. Okay, so step back. So I have the first animation, now I add the next one, and it's going to, there's not gonna be enough pieces of paper on the, or not enough paper left to be completely on the screen, and I kind of want to have this endless look to it. So before I do that, I add another piece of paper. I'm gonna resize it as well to kind of match in terms of size the other piece I have. And then this is kind of hard on this monitor because it's not, the resolution isn't quite big enough. But I take the second piece of paper and I attach it to the bottom of the first one. So you kind of see how I'm trying to line them up down here. So they're matching. And then let's go back up here. And now I want to group those two items together so they can move as a unit. To keep things simple on the timeline so I don't have too many groups, right after I'm done, I'm happy with the first animation, so I make a split at this point so the I can group only these two pieces of paper together, and I don't affect the stuff before it. So I group them. Now I have a group which is my second piece of paper. And now I apply the visual animation to that particular group, move it up, and plenty of paper to keep going. So now we have the first piece of paper move in. Up. Okay, so now my computer is not quite keeping up with the animation. Here's the second piece that slides in. Let's see if I can make this bigger. So, right, one more time. So, first piece slides in. Second piece slides in, and now I could keep sliding and keep sliding and keep sliding it by simply aligning it outside the preview area. Yeah?
Is there a reason you wouldn't copy the first piece of paper or copy and paste right off the track?
I could have very easily done that. That probably would have been better because then the piece of paper would have had the same size and I wouldn't have had to adjust it afterwards. Okay. That was just, yeah.
Okay.
One way or the other way. But yeah, that's a good idea. Like that's probably what one could have done and just copied the first piece of paper again and align it with the second one. But it's important, like keep in mind, like if you can group things, you can move things together, and that really helps you kind of align things a lot of the way. What else did I have Okay, let's do this one. So here's an effect that I saw, and I really wanted to recreate that in Camtasia Studio. So this text shows up, it folds down, and it comes back in. Yeah? That was really nice. And I tried to do that, and I tried to do that with what I had available before. So let's actually, but I ran into a problem. So let me bring in, actually we can just do that with normal text too as an example. Okay, and let's say Camtasia as a text. Ah, come on. Not yet.
You can't group on the Mac yet? Wow. I didn't know that.
Okay. Okay, so this took a second to set up. So what we have, the problem I have with when we try to have the like fold out effect is that I can add to my text, I can add, let's make this even a little bit bigger, is I can add my visual property and I can say add animation and I can say turn by 180 degrees. Nope, that's not the one. 90. So I can say, okay, come on. But it just kind of like, it turns, the animation is based on the center of the object. So it's really hard, so I can't make it just fold away because it's always just gonna like spin on its own axis. So what I did to create a similar effect,
With the transparent background, put the text at the top.
exactly.
So the middle becomes the bottom becomes the middle.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So what I did is I don't need this. So I created a graphic with the text, and you can see that I added a lot of transparency to the bottom. So the text is in the top half, the bottom is half, so the axis is no longer centered in the middle of the text, but it's really centered right here. And that was something I just did in probably Snagit, if I had to guess. Yeah, you bring in, actually let's do this. Okay, let's say we want to flip this baby owl and kind of have it like fold out. So I have my image, I go to image size, resize, and then resize canvas. And now I see that currently this image is 409 pixels tall. We're going to double that, so that would be 818. Oh, wrong one. Okay, so 568, oh, math. Where are the math teachers? What is it? 1036. And I'm gonna keep it aligned at the top. So now if you look at this image, it's twice as tall. Yeah. Actually, no, there's a bit missing. We're not quite centered yet. Okay, so let's add another 100 pixels to the bottom. No problem, that's what Snagit is good for. Okay, now we can even see right here we have the drag points, which are always in the middle of the image, and we can see this is perfectly aligned. So it's twice as tall as, yeah. So this is the way it is. Now I'm going ahead and I'm sending this straight over to Camtasia Studio using the output. And I'm going to drag this onto my timeline. And here we have now have the owl, and sitting in the middle of the picture, and we want to flip it out, or like fold it down slowly towards the back. Visual animation, add that, let's zoom in, add that right here. It might take us a little bit more than a second, and so now I change the property to, what is it, 90, let's do -90 so it folds towards, I'm sorry, my keyboard is unfortunately in German, so some of the keys don't match up with what it actually is written on here. Here we go, 90, okay. Is that right? Why isn't it completely gone? I'm not quite sure why it's not completely gone, but that's okay, because we're also going to set down the transparency at the end, the opacity to 0. So now we have the effect of the owl being folded down, or maybe we even keep this up just for. And now we have the owl that gets folded down. We can do that with text or anything else. I'm not quite sure why there's still a little bit of an artifact right there. I would need to see maybe the graphic isn't quite sized correctly or so. But that's how you can recreate that effect. Just by adding more transparency to any side of it, you can change on which axis stuff is being turned. So you can also do that with if you have text and you add more transparency to the left side or the right side of that, and you can kind of have it like fold out like a door or something like that. So just by adding the transparency, you can really shift where that axis is. Because right now in Camtasia, we just base it on the center of the object. But with a little bit of creativity, you can flip that on any axis you want. Okay. Okay. So one thing that I like is a little effect that I apply to a lot of the arrows I add to my Camtasia projects. How much good. So usually we have a lot of the time the arrow just kind of pops up. It's like, hey, it's an owl. And I like it when they kind of like bounce into the picture. And let's see, did I already do that? Yeah. So the way I would do that, so there's two parts to that. So let's delete all that. Up, come here, visual properties. Okay. Here's my arrow, and I don't want it to just fade in and fade out, but I kind of want it to come in and be like, hey, it's an owl. So again, final point, or final, first set it up the way I want to be at the end of the animation. Then I go ahead and throw my animation on there, go back to the beginning, and now first up I'm going to move it a couple pixels to the left. And maybe also bring down the opacity just a little bit. So let's take a look at that. That's the first step. Okay, takes a little bit longer than I want. Shorten that to maybe half a second. Okay, so now it just kind of is like, hey, it's an owl. Now if we want to add that a little bit extra twist to that, I'm going to add a second animation. And I'm going to have the start point be at the end of the first movement. And then the end point, I'm going to move this back just a couple pixels, like 4 or 5 pixels back to where it came from. So let's look at this. So it comes in and kind of is like, so it just has a little bit more of a smooth effect to it. And that's also what I did earlier with the text, that where you thought I was using easing, but it was more like it shows up and doesn't just stop, but it's kind of like it bounces off the object it just pointed at. Just adds another little effect to it. I think it's quite nice to just kind of make things look a little bit easy. Now I'm curious to see what happens if we actually add exponential to both of these. Okay, didn't make much of a difference. The nice thing is once you have this set up, so I have my bouncing arrow now, and I'm going to, I split it so I can just cut it down. So I now have my bouncing arrow. And now I'm going to, now I have to remember if I can, yeah. Now I'm just going to add that to my library. It's saved in here, and I always have my bouncing arrow. So if I'm at a project later on, a different one for a different school, I don't have to recreate that animation. I just bring it down here, and it's like, okay, and here's my bouncing arrow, and every time I use it, it's in there.
Anton, another question.
Yeah.
If you wanted to change the shape of the arrows, and you want to just take those animation assets, those 3 animation assets, can you copy those 3 animation assets as a group and then put them onto another object?
Copy them as a group is not possible. You have to copy them individually. So if you say you want to have that same bouncy effect, but you want to have it applied to this.
Best thing is then copy the asset in and then just change the shape of the background again. Okay.
Yeah, you can, that's probably the best. So so we have a bouncing arrow, so let's copy that one, paste it in, and then copy this one, and paste it in. Hopefully that works. Oops. Oh. I need to make sure that I still set the point where it needs to come in.
It's going to go to where the arrow is, yeah.
Yeah, so let's see. Now we should have a bouncing. Nope. Okay, that did not work.
I always had a problem with that.
Why is that? Okay, let's see what's happening compared to this one.
I was wondering if there was a hotkey where you could sort of, in trying to copy, press one hotkey and then go click, click, click to group select those animation bits.
Let me see, but I don't think that's possible.
We need Kayak Man if he's here.
Oh, maybe?
You missed me.
No, we're talking about hotkeys.
Oh,
So there's
hotkeys.
3 animations, and I'm wondering if there's a way
Yes.
of talking to the animations using a hotkey.
Yeah, if you hold down Control, you can select multiple ones. So I have 2 of them selected right now.
Okay.
And then copy, and then later on you can
Okay.
throw them back
I
in.
can group animations by using a hotkey and then copy. Excellent.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what else can I show you guys? Let's see. So here's a part in the video that I really like. So we get to this part where this monitor shows up, and it's just like, oh, it looks like a graphic of a Mac with Camtasia Mac on it. But then the next thing happens that we actually zoom in, and this is actually the video playing already on that graphic. So it's actually it's a video as well as it's a video that zooms in that's part of this particular graphic. So this is how I built this particular one. Oh, I think Windows is about to crash on here. Let's start a new one. No, I don't want to save that. Let's see, I think I saved that out. The phone call. Did I not? Okay. Okay. That would be, I think, is in here. I hope it finds everything. Yes, yes, yes. So in case you're wondering, this is how I organize my videos.
Well, always good practice once you finish something is to zip the project. So everything's always in one spot.
Yeah, this particular project is like 5 projects within a project. But I did find the right section. Okay. Okay, let's... And this might get messy, let's see. No, that's just the part of the... Let's look in this group. There's groups within groups. That's still the notebook background. Okay. So I found this particular section. Let's take a look exactly what I did. So I have... Ah, come on. Why is this being so complicated? Okay. So this is where it starts. So I have... Nah, I'm sorry, my computer is being really slow right now and not cooperating. Just... Hi. Okay. Okay, this is really strange. I can't select my group. Anyone from Camtasia in here?
Don't you just press the plus to...
Yeah, but I can't select the actual media that's in that particular group, which is really... Like, I can select the stuff in this in this group, but the one I'm trying to get to... Oh, that might be it. Ah.
So this is, you just run into an interesting point, because I think sometimes this occasionally happens is when you got something locked, you know how there are diagonal stripes?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is a correct statement, but it feels sometimes like occasionally the diagonal stripes show up and sometimes they don't.
Mm.
On a lock
When you're
track?
locking something, yeah.
Yeah, well, there is a bug that affects the captions track for sure.
Okay,
Locking and unlocking.
okay.
And oftentimes when you are working with a locked caption track and you go and do something, the track loses those stripes
Yeah,
while you're working, and so you will not know that the caption track is still locked. And if you look at the little lock icon,
yeah.
which is, for me, it's hard to see because it's so tiny.
Tiny.
And it looks just like the one that's unlocked.
So let's talk about a feature request.
Yeah. Mike, are you writing this down?
Well, this is a request I made a long time ago when we started having the lock tracks, is when the track is locked, could the icon change to red?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's probably easy enough to do.
Well, it should be, yes,
Yeah.
because it does say lock unlock. But when you've got multiple tracks, and on a screen, it's hard to see which one's locked. But if it's locked, I understand the lock icon changes. But if also the background image changed to red, then you know stop. Yeah, no, so whether you apply that idea to the diagonal strips changing color, I think it's all right if they're gray and diagonal is handy. But the little lock, when you've got lots of locks, it's really nice to know which is locked and which is unlocked. And the icon image of lock and unlock is good, but because they're all the same color, I just want to find what's the lock track. And if it went red, it would be a really easy, simple thing. Should be an easy, simple thing to do. And it's all about visual communication and visual superiority effect. And red we understand is stop.
Right. Thanks for that request. All right, we're almost out of time, but I finally got this particular effect to work. So what I did here is really similar to what we did before, is where we group things together to move them as a unit, where we move the paper together as a unit. In here I have, in that particular group, I have a graphic of just the MacBook, and I have my particular video, which I sized to be in that size. They are grouped together, and now I can, and then I do a zoom in on that group. That means that both objects get resized together, and therefore they it has that effect as if, yeah, as if they move together, and you still have the video in there. But because I grouped them, they move together rather than being slightly off, where one kind of moves to the left and the other one to the right, and it looks off. And then after that, I made a cut just to keep my editing simple, because it's just going to get too many groups within groups within groups. So I just sometimes make a cut and then kind of start from scratch, moving on forward.
Or the trick is, if you've got lots of groups and a lot of editing, use 2 monitors and then slide all the editing track off to one monitor. Then you can open it up and you can see everything.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't always have that luxury when I'm traveling and so forth.
So what you do is you can unlock the canvas that's being observed, and you can. So you use 2 monitors.
Oh, yes.
You put the canvas
So,
on one monitor,
yeah.
and then now you can.
So this
expand
goes
it.
on one monitor, and then you can drag the tracks up like this, and then you have both together. Okay, questions? It's on? Oh, questions? If not, I'm happy to sit down with any of you and kind of show you that stuff again in detail, or if you say, how can I do this, I'm happy to figure out a way with you to do that. So a couple things to take away from the session is use transparency with your images to add extra borders to change on which axis stuff moves. The other one is use grouping to move stuff together. And then also, like, less is often more. Don't go crazy with the animations. You don't want to be that guy with crazy spinning things that comes in, because that's like PowerPoint from 1995, and we don't want to go back there. But a little bit of easing in, and then like having that little arrow bounce back, that stuff is nice. And then like any kind of like standard assets you create, you can even do that with like title slides and so forth. Save them to your library if you're using Camtasia Studio, because that way you can reuse them in additional and future projects. If you're working on Mac, you don't have a library, but what you can do is you can create a master project where you save out all your little, where you set up all your different animations. And you can have multiple Camtasia Mac projects open. And you can copy from one project to another. So you can have your animations master project where you have your bouncing arrow saved into, your intro slide saved into, and then you select those 3-4 elements that are part of that particular animation, copy paste or command paste, I guess, on a Mac, and then you open them, bring them, paste it into the current project you're working on. So you don't have a library, but you can kind of have like a library project as a workaround that works really well as well. Yeah, that's all I got for you. Have fun.
One request.
Yeah.
It's not important. Make a separate file. We call it Anton's Advanced Animation Tutorial Tips. So you can see your new ideas when you come up with them again in the future. Because it's wonderful to see this, and I think lots of other people would like to, not just the people in the room, would like to be able to share
Okay.
and see how it is you make some of these animations.
Okay.
Because it's only going to help other users of Camtasia.
That's a really good idea, and I've done a few of those for the German YouTube channel and so forth, and they've always been really well received by the community. So I'll see what I can do in terms of getting some of those also making.
We close captions, or you can type in-
Yeah, it's not that hard to make a quick. I mean, I can make a little quick video about it. It doesn't have to be a proper tutorial. It's more like, hey, this is how I make a bouncing arrow. This is how I make an intro slide. This is how.
The tutorials that Shane did were very useful, and this is in that same sort of vein.